Hey, so I wanted to share this spiritual wisdom from my own life. And this is an example of how I use this certain concept to free myself of karmic loops. Okay, so I want to say that, first of all, whenever we're pointing the finger, it is an opportunity to free ourselves from something. Okay, because if I'm pointing the finger, I'm seeing something. The reason that I'm seeing it is because there is an energetic snag or correlation or resonance within me that sees it. Now this goes for if I am noticing something that I like in someone else, and it also goes for if I'm noticing something I don't like in someone else, right? Okay, so here's this example that I'm going to share with you that just happened in my life within the last couple days. So I'm going to change the names just to protect the anonymity. If you know me and you know my family, then maybe you could figure it out or get an idea. I mean, I am going to reference my mother, so there's lovely, and although she's not on the same journey as me, I learn so much from my mother all the time. She's a kind, loving woman, and I really am inspired by her quite often, and so grateful to have her as my mother. So she had an interaction with a family member, and the family member got triggered. And when she was telling me about it a little bit, which we're not in the habit of talking about each other's experiences anymore, we've broken that. We know that that's not a helpful thing to do to each other. But she used a tone to describe the justification of her action, right? And it was like, we'll call him Bob. Well, Bob, it was like that. And I, because I'm a sensitive person now, being sensitive means I can just sense subtle energy. I can sense subtle scents. I can sense subtle tastes. I can sense subtle energies that are dense, meaning I can tell when someone's lying by how it feels. Meaning when I read the cards or when I read an astrology chart, I can tell if what I'm saying is true by how it feels. And I can tell if I haven't quite found the full truth by how it feels. And so the same way, when she used this tone to speak, I noticed that it felt dense. It didn't feel good, right? And I was the one noticing it. And I kind of just said, well, that tone, and she said, well, I wasn't using that tone at the time. So she was just using that tone with me, which is an even more interesting aspect of this whole thing. Meaning at the time she triggered him, whatever she did was the thing that was in his resonance. But at the time she was talking to me about the experience, she used a tone which was a trigger to me. And this supports the idea, which I've said in many videos, that when we have a karmic pattern within us, people will come in contact with us to show it to us. And once we resolve that karmic pattern within us, people can show up a different way. So my mother showed up how she needed to help both parties heal what they had to heal. Use it as an example to understand the concept that still prevails on a larger scale, which is that what we see in others exists in us, and that we will be activated in our karmic patterns so that we can notice them. So that was the first time I kind of noted out loud when I commented on my mother's tone, right? I let it go right away. Well, today, someone called me And this person had called me previously asking me for something. I declined. I said that I couldn't. I've been really respecting myself and using my boundaries where I need to for people who tend to take an unboundaried way. And so a little while later, I called this person, and I was actually in a position to help them with something and offered, and they took my offer of help, but I still had some errands to run. So I said, that I would be doing my errands first, and then I would be by to help this person. So this person, while I was, after my first errand, I'm on my second errand. It was just 2 errands that I had to do. I told this person that I had to do both errands, and that I would let them know that when I was going to arrive. This person called me, and when I asked, when I answered, they said, "Well, where are you at?" And I used that tone. We'll use the name Bob again, but again, neither of these characters were named Bob. I said, "Bob, can you practice your patience, and just let me complete my tasks before I make my way to you?" And I noticed my own tone right away. And I noticed that my tone was meant to shame Bob into feeling like he was wrong to call and ask me. Now, just so you know, Bob, in this case, is somebody who has a hard time grasping and following social norms, right? That's his role in this incarnation, is to challenge people's expectations and norms. You can't have expectations of him, and you can't expect him to understand social norms. And I do know that about him. So what happened was that pattern that was likely passed on to me at an earlier time in life, likely from my mother, was being brought up to my awareness so that I could finally heal it. And so when I noticed that tone in myself, trying to shame somebody with my tone, I immediately, retracted, apologized to his soul, did the Ho'oponopono prayer a few times, cut the cord between that, and then knew that I was going to have to address this within myself, because it was an unconscious habit, right? Like, I wasn't choosing to speak that way. That was this response that happened in response to somebody violating my boundary. When in fact, all I really needed to do was calmly state my boundary again. All I needed to say was, actually, I don't appreciate you calling to check up on me when I'm trying to focus on my own tasks. And like I said before, I will be in touch, and end the call. No big deal, and no need to try to shame this person. This person isn't going to allow themselves to feel shame. It's a coping mechanism they already have established in their lives. So, and shame isn't helpful for anybody, So do you see how first I saw it in someone else, I let it go, not realizing it was in me, but it's always in me, It's always in me. It was in me, I thought maybe as a judgment, but actually it was in me as a behavior I do. So it was revealed to me through my interactions on the very next day that I also use that tactic. And this is a karmic pattern. See, it's been passed along as a modeled behavior to me, and a behavior that I exhibit, and that I have likely passed on to my children as well, or whoever I was in the caretaking position of. So I do apologize for that, and the only thing I can do is not to beat myself up or to say, poor me. It's like, no, I take responsibility. I actually check in with the part of me who's doing that, find out with some self-inquiry on why I'm doing that, deal with any feelings that are associated with having done that, or feelings that I felt when that was done to me, process through them, accept them fully, so that I can integrate that behavior, that feeling, and that experience from the very first time it happened to me, which is what created the behavior in the first place in me, so that in the next time I'm in a situation where somebody pokes me in that way or behaves in a way that makes me want to assert my boundary again, I don't do it in a manner that tries to shame them, that I just do it matter of fact, like a boundary is. You know, I don't agree to being treated by somebody that I'm there at their beck and call, or that I need to rush or be on their timetable. But that's not necessarily what this person was doing, right? Maybe Bob was anxious. Maybe Bob thought that I was abandoning him or forgetting him because that's been done to him. You know, it's not necessarily personal that my boundary is that I don't want to be kept tabs on for every step of my journeys. It doesn't mean that whatever his intention was is that. I can still have my boundary. I can still say I don't agree to being treated that way, but it doesn't mean his reasons for treating me that way aren't valid to him. So there's no need for me to take offense. It's not personal. And this concept of using the mirror of what we see in others is really in ourselves, of what we point at in others is really in ourselves, has been one of the most valuable tools for me to use to untangle and free myself from karmic patterns that were making me miserable, that were making me unhappy, that were making me depressed, anxious, just awful feelings, you know, not happy to be alive like I am now. I am so delighted, you know, it was so worth, they call it work, but it's like you don't have to make it work either. It can be fun if you just change your mindset to growth mindset. It's like, welcome those moments as a gift. Oh, somebody poked me in a place it hurts and made me and showed me a response in myself that isn't very flattering. Yay, thank you. I'm not going to justify my behavior. I'm not going to blame them instead. I'm not going to say there was a reason for it or that, you know, anything like that. I'm going to be like, oh, this is a freaking gift. This person just showed me where I can free myself even more, where I can gain back some of the power that I was seeping out in an energetic pattern that's no longer serving me. It's also not to shame us for having had the patterns as long as we have had them. When this happens, when it comes to our awareness, is the perfect time for us to be freed from it. Okay? So I want to make sure that I'm also not giving the impression that it's wrong for me to have had this pattern, or wrong for my mother to have had this pattern. This pattern existed, and as many times as I lived it out must be the number of times I needed to live it out in order to really learn from it fully. At this point that I'm seeing it, I've seen what I need to know, and what I see now is that it's actually a process of trying to deflect shame or put shame on somebody else in order to control them. And that is not what I'm about. I know better than that now, you know? So I'm so glad to be freed of that pattern, and I'm so glad to share this example of the experience that I lived out to apply that to life, and hopefully you can understand, given my example, and use this tool to free yourself when appropriate. Let me know if you have any questions or insights or experiences that you've noticed in your own life where you saw something outside of yourself that you realized was really existing in you. Thanks for spending your time with me. I'll see you next time.